President Trump showcasing his increasing frustration with the Russia-Ukraine war and with Vladimir Putin.
I didn't like last night. I wasn't happy with it. And we're in the midst of talking peace, and missiles were fired.
The president speaking to reporters while hosting the Prime Minister of Norway, not long after posting this rare rebuke of Russia's president on his Truth Social platform, saying, quote, "I'm not happy with Russian strikes on Kyiv. Not necessary and very bad timing. Vladimir, stop." President Trump was responding to this, Russia's deadliest strikes on the Ukrainian capital since last summer. The attack underscoring the administration's failure to secure a peace agreement between Moscow and Kyiv, as the president is on the brink of marking his first 100 days in office. Remember, he said he'd end the war in just 24 hours.
You don't know what pressure I'm putting on Russia. They're dealing. You have no idea what pressure I'm putting on Russia. We're putting a lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure? We do know that President Trump has put a lot of pressure on Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, beginning with their famous shouting match in the Oval Office 2 months ago and continuing yesterday when the president accused Zelensky of prolonging the war by not agreeing to a U.S. peace proposal. So, what pressure is the president putting on Putin? He says he's holding off for now on any new sanctions against Russia, and when asked if Putin has made any actual concessions, this was the president's response.
Stopping the war, taking the whole country, pretty big concession.
Stopping taking the whole country is a pretty big concession. Let's get straight to CNN's Jeff Zeleny. He is live for us now at the White House. So, Jeff, you were in the Oval Office today, and you actually asked the president about that Truth Social post and Vladimir Putin. What did he say?
Well, Casey, it was pretty striking that the president actually called out Vladimir Putin by name in a Truth Social post this morning, saying, Vladimir, stop. So we asked the president sort of what led to that more personal level of appeal, if you will. And it was the overnight bombing. I mean, the president was pretty clear there when he answered our question. He did not like what he saw and asked, if there'd be more sanctions or what the plans were. Will the administration walk away? What will they do? He said, ask me in a week. So now we have a bit of a timeline here. I wouldn't call it a deadline, but I think a timeline for next steps. Look, there's no doubt this is a bit of very frustrating episode for this president who clearly underestimated how difficult it would be to try and negotiate some type of a ceasefire. Now, he said he has no allegiance to either side. That's very much an open question because that has been one of the underpinnings of all of this. So the deal that they're asking Ukraine to sign on to is seen very favorably toward Russia in many respects. Of course, Russia would not see it like that. But look, the bottom line to this, the president is very, I think, wise to the fact that some of his critics believe he's been played by Vladimir Putin. He, of course, would not say that or agree to that, but that is what it's beginning to look like here. So at the end of this all, what has this gotten? Has there been any progress at all? It certainly doesn't seem like it. But the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, was also in the Oval Office today, and he said, look, the only person trying to make peace is the president here. So that is going to be a stain on his legacy and an unachieved goal if he does not reach that. And, of course, it is not looking like it's heading in the right direction, Casey.
Yeah, the question, though, about peace is at what cost?
Sure.
Jeff Zeleny, thank you very much for that report. Our panel joins us now. CNN political and national security analyst David Sanger's here. CNN senior political analyst Ron Brownstein is live in person from the West Coast.
Indeed.
It's great to have you for the first time in the arena. CNN political commentator Xochitl Hinojosa and former chief of staff to Vice President Mike Pence, Mark Short, is with us. Thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it. David Sanger, I want to start with you on this because obviously, what the president is saying in public, saying stop Vladimir, something relatively unusual. But when you actually ask him the brass tacks of, what concessions has Russia made here, his answer to that question is pretty stunning for anyone who has been trying to support Ukraine for however many years. Help us understand how we should be understanding this.
So there are three remarkable things in his answers today. First, stop Vladimir is something you say in a policy difference. It's not something you say after they've just done a missile attack on civilians that killed 9 people 2 days after you've just dismantled the system that is being used by the United States to track war crimes and prosecute them. Okay, so that's number one. And attacking civilians is high up on the list. And those groups that he dismantled were looking at things like the Russian killings in Bucha. The second remarkable part of this is saying we're going to, under this proposal, have the United States recognize that Crimea, which was taken in 7 years before the war broke out in 2014, is actually now Russian territory. It has not only been the policy of the United States never to recognize this because it was basically invaded, but it was the policy of Mike Pompeo, who gave a very impassioned account when he was Secretary of State in the first term about why the United States should never do this. And it was the subject of an amendment introduced in the Senate by Marco Rubio, who was sitting right there, who basically made this case. Third remarkable thing that comes out of this is he says he's put pressure on Vladimir Putin. Well, so far he has given Vladimir Putin, without negotiations really starting, that Ukraine will never enter NATO, and given him all of this territory. So what exactly have they demanded of Putin? We haven't so far heard one thing.
Yeah, well, and to read a little bit more from the reporting you had about Marco Rubio, you note in your recent story in the Times that just 3 years ago, Rubio, who was then a senator, now chief of state, Secretary of State, co-sponsored that amendment. And at the time he said this, quote, "The United States cannot recognize Putin's claims, or we risk establishing a dangerous precedent for the other authoritarian regimes, like the Chinese Communist Party, to imitate," he said at the time. This, of course, an allusion to Taiwan. The stakes here are much bigger than just Russia and Ukraine.
Absolutely. The fundamental rule since the end of World War II is the international system comes down on you if you try to rewrite national borders by force. That's exactly what Russia did. It's why the president didn't want to say who was responsible for the war. And now he's basically saying we're going to forget about that rule.
Yeah, I kind of feel watching this, beware of what you wish for. I mean, President Trump is pressuring Ukraine into a settlement that, as David is saying, gives Russia essentially everything it wants. The one thing Russia is agreeing to do is not dismember the entire country, which it's not clear at all that they could do anyway, right? And leaving Ukraine in a position where they are fundamentally weak and exposed to further Russian aggression. Think about Kabul in 2021 and what it did to Joe Biden. Donald Trump may think he can walk away from this and allow it to get really bad for Ukraine and have no consequences. Americans, may be divided on how much aid they want the U.S. to give. They have no division about who they believe is in the wrong in this war and who they want to see it. And if he creates circumstances that leave Ukraine in an impossible situation, he ultimately may regret it as much as Joe Biden did in the fall of 2021 on the withdrawal from Afghanistan.
Yeah. Mark Short, you, of course, served Mike Pence through the first Trump administration. I mean, given what David outlined about where the first Trump administration was on this, I mean, how do you see this?
To me, it's surprising that the Neville Chamberlain Republicans are surprised that when you appease a murderous dictator, he wants more. And it's surprising the dramatic difference from where we were in the first administration.
Neville Chamberlain Republicans.
David mentions the Crimea Declaration, which Trump administration asserted will never allow Russia to claim Crimea. It wasn't just that. It was basically standing in the gap and saying, no, we're not going to allow Nord Stream 2. Biden administration reversed that. It was the Trump administration actually taking out mercenaries against Russia and Syria. It was Trump administration providing Javelin missiles to Ukraine. It's a dramatic 180-degree turn from what the first administration policy was.